I need to say this up front. I didn't mean it. Not really. I was emotional, frustrated, and trying to teach him a lesson during a fight. I wanted him to understand how I felt. I wanted him to see what he was losing by taking me for granted. But the words I threw at him weren't harmless. They weren't playful. They definitely weren't reversible. I said, honestly, if I could start over, I'd choose your brother. I expected anger. I expected a fight. I expected him to finally show some emotion instead of his usual infuriating calm. Instead of yelling, he shocked me. He invited his brother to dinner. That same night. Made it sound casual. Made it sound friendly. And then he made me sit through the most humiliating evening of my life. He made me watch as he told his brother exactly what I'd said. Made me squirm as his brother looked at me with disgust. Made me feel every ounce of shame I deserved for saying something so cruel. And when it was over, he packed my bags and told me to start over somewhere else. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Now, let's dive in. The fight started small, insignificant even. The kind of argument that shouldn't have escalated but somehow always does when you're already frustrated about other things piling up beneath the surface. My husband, let's call him Marcus, had forgotten to make reservations for our anniversary dinner. Not forgotten the anniversary completely, just forgotten to actually book the restaurant I'd been talking about for weeks. The specific restaurant I'd mentioned at least a dozen times. The place I'd shown him pictures of on my phone. The reservation I'd reminded him to make just 3 days ago. I'm sorry, he said when I brought it up that afternoon. I've been busy at work. I forgot to call them. You forgot, I repeated, my voice tight with disappointment and anger. You forgot our anniversary. I didn't forget the anniversary, he corrected, his tone already defensive. I forgot to make the reservation. We can still go somewhere else. There are plenty of good restaurants. That's not the point, I said, feeling anger build in my chest like water behind a dam. The point is that I've been talking about this restaurant for weeks, and you couldn't be bothered to make a simple phone call. I said I'm sorry, he replied, his voice staying infuriatingly calm in that way that always made me feel like I was overreacting. I'll call them tomorrow and see if we can go another night. Another night, I said, my voice getting louder. Our anniversary is today, Marcus, not tomorrow, not next week, today. The day we got married 5 years ago. The day that's supposed to be important to both of us. He sighed, that exhausted, dismissive sigh that felt like he was tolerating a tantrum rather than acknowledging legitimate hurt. I know, he said, and I'm sorry, but I can't undo it now. The restaurant is fully booked tonight. We can either go somewhere else or we can reschedule for next week when they have availability. That sigh, that casual acceptance of his own failure, that suggestion that we could just move our anniversary to a more convenient date, like it was a dentist appointment. That's what pushed me over the edge. Because this wasn't just about the restaurant. This wasn't just about one forgotten reservation. This was about months of feeling like I was an afterthought in his life. Months of feeling like everything else, his work, his hobbies, his friends, his video games, his whatever, came before me. I couldn't remember the last time he'd planned something special for us without me having to ask. Couldn't remember the last time he'd surprised me with anything. Couldn't remember the last time I felt like I was a priority instead of just another item on his to-do list that he kept putting off. And I was tired of it. Tired of being understanding, tired of being patient, tired of making excuses for him, tired of accepting his half-hearted apologies while nothing actually changed. I wanted him to feel something, to react, to show me that I mattered enough to get upset about, to demonstrate that losing me would actually bother him. So I decided to make him feel what I was feeling, to make him understand what it was like to be compared unfavorably to someone else, to make him see what he was losing by taking me for granted. And I knew exactly what would hurt him most. His brother David had always been the golden child, the successful one, the one who did everything right. Better job, better car, better house. The one their parents always pointed to as an example. The one Marcus had spent his entire life being compared to and found lacking. I'd always been careful never to make those comparisons myself. I knew it was a sore spot, knew that Marcus felt like he'd never quite measured up to his older brother, knew that any comparison between them was a wound that never fully healed. But in that moment, I didn't care about being careful. I didn't care about protecting his feelings. I cared about making him hurt the way he'd been hurting me with his indifference. "You know what?" I said, my voice cold and sharp. "Your brother would never forget something like this." Marcus went very still, his whole body tensed. "What?" "Your brother," I repeated, gaining momentum now, feeling powerful in my cruelty. "He remembers every important date. He makes reservations weeks in advance. He actually pays attention to what his wife wants." "Don't," Marcus said quietly, a warning in his voice that I chose to ignore. But I couldn't stop. Or maybe I didn't want to stop. I wanted to hurt him. Wanted to make him feel small and inadequate. Wanted him to understand what I'd been feeling for months. "He's more successful than you," I continued, listing things I'd been thinking, but never said out loud, things I'd observed but kept to myself. "He has a better job, makes more money, drives a nicer car, lives in a nicer house, takes better care of himself." "Stop," Marcus said, his voice still that terrible calm that somehow felt more dangerous than yelling. "He's confident," I pressed on, drunk on the power of finally saying all these things I'd been holding back. "He's ambitious. He doesn't settle for mediocre. He doesn't forget important things because he actually cares about the people in his life. He makes his wife feel valued and appreciated." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just stood there taking it, absorbing every blow. And that silence, that refusal to defend himself, or fight back, or show any emotion, made me angrier, made me want to push harder, made me want to find the line that would finally get a reaction out of him. So I crossed it. I said the thing that would hurt him most, the comparison that would destroy something between us that could never be repaired. "If I had the chance to start over," I said, looking him directly in the eyes so he could see I meant it, "I'd choose him instead of you." The words hung in the air between us like poison gas, toxic, lethal, impossible to take back. I watched his face change, watched the hurt flash across his features before being quickly suppressed. Watched something fundamental shift in his expression, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time and was horrified by what he saw. I saw the light die in my husband's eyes, the hope, the love, the belief that we were partners who had each other's backs, all of it gone in the space of one cruel sentence. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself, didn't yell or throw things or storm out like I'd expected and maybe even wanted. He just looked at me for a long moment, his face completely blank now, all emotion carefully locked away. Then he said, in that same eerily calm voice, "Good to know." 2 words, that's all he gave me, and then he walked away. I stood there in the kitchen, my heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins, already regretting what I'd said, but too proud to take it back immediately. Too invested in being right, in being the wounded party, in making him the villain of this story. I'd expected a fight, a big emotional confrontation where we'd yell at each other and say horrible things, and then eventually, exhausted and purged, we'd make up like we always did. I didn't expect him to just walk away, to accept what I'd said without argument, to give me those 2 words, "Good to know," and leave me standing there alone. That scared me more than any fight would have. Because Marcus always engaged, always tried to work through problems, always wanted to talk things out until we reached some kind of resolution. The fact that he'd just walked away suggested something had fundamentally changed, that I'd crossed a line that even his usual patience and understanding couldn't forgive. For the next hour, Marcus stayed in the living room. I stayed in the kitchen. Neither of us spoke. I kept waiting for him to come back, to start the argument I'd been trying to provoke. But he just sat there, scrolling through his phone in silence. I thought the night was ruined, but not destroyed. I thought we'd eventually talk it out like we always did. I thought I'd apologize and he'd apologize and we'd move past it. Until I heard him in the living room later, calm, polite, controlled, making a phone call. At first, I thought it was work. But then I heard him laugh, actually laugh, like nothing was wrong. Curiosity got the better of me. I peeked around the corner. My blood ran cold. He was talking to his brother. I could tell from the way he was speaking, the familiar tone, the casual conversation. "Yeah, I know it's last minute," Marcus was saying, "but I thought it would be good to catch up. Tonight works. Perfect." My stomach dropped. "Just dinner," Marcus continued. "Nothing fancy, just the three of us. There's something we need to discuss." He was inviting his brother over, here, tonight, after what I'd just said about choosing his brother instead of him. He glanced up and saw me standing in the doorway. Our eyes met. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Great," he said into the phone, still looking at me. "See you in an hour." He hung up. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice high and strained. "Inviting my brother to dinner," Marcus said calmly. "You seem to have a lot to say about him. I thought you might want to tell him directly." "Marcus, no," I said, panic rising in my chest. "Don't do this. Please." "Why not?" he asked, tilting his head. "You said you'd choose him if you could start over. This seems like a good opportunity to explore that option." "I didn't mean it," I said quickly. "I was angry. I was just trying to make you feel bad about forgetting the reservation. I didn't actually mean—" "You meant it enough to say it," Marcus interrupted. "Multiple times. In detail. You listed all the reasons he's better than me. So let's have a conversation about it, all three of us." "This is insane," I said, my voice breaking. "You can't invite him over to— To what? Humiliate me?" "I'm not trying to humiliate you," Marcus said, though his eyes suggested otherwise. "I'm just facilitating the conversation you clearly wanted to have. You want to compare us? Let's compare. You want to explore what life would be like with him instead of me? Let's explore that." "Please don't do this," I begged. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I was wrong. Please don't involve your brother." "Too late," Marcus said simply. "He's already on his way." He stood up and walked to the kitchen, leaving me frozen in the living room. I heard him opening cabinets, getting dishes, setting the table like this was a normal dinner party, like he hadn't just orchestrated the most humiliating situation imaginable. I considered leaving, just grabbing my keys and getting out before his brother arrived. But where would I go? And wouldn't that make me look even worse? So I stayed, and I waited, and I prayed that somehow this wouldn't be as bad as I was imagining. I was very, very wrong. His brother arrived exactly an hour later, punctual as always, one of the many things I'd mentioned during my cruel comparison. He rang the doorbell cheerfully, completely unaware of what he was walking into. In his mind, this was probably just a casual weeknight dinner with his brother and sister-in-law. Marcus opened the door with a warm smile. "Thanks for coming on such short notice." "No problem," his brother, let's call him David, said, stepping inside. "It's been too long since we all hung out." He hugged Marcus, then turned to me. "Hey, how are you?" I forced a smile, my face feeling like it might crack. "Hi, David." He looked between us, sensing something off, but not able to identify what. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Marcus said smoothly. "Come on, let's eat. I ordered from that Italian place you like." We sat down at the table. David made small talk about work, about his wife, about some renovations they were doing on their house. Normal, pleasant conversation. I couldn't eat, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Just sat there waiting for Marcus to detonate the bomb he'd so carefully constructed. And he waited. Let us get through appetizers. Let David relax. Let me think that maybe, just maybe, this was actually a normal dinner, and Marcus had decided to let it go. Then, right as David was telling a story about his recent promotion, Marcus interrupted. David, there's something we need to discuss, he said calmly. David stopped mid-sentence. Okay, what's up? Marcus looked at me. She has something she wants to tell you. My soul left my body. What? I stammered. Go ahead, Marcus encouraged, his voice pleasant but his eyes cold. Tell him what you told me earlier. David looked confused. Tell me what? I stared at Marcus, silently begging him not to do this. He stared back, unmoved. It's nothing, I said quickly. Just a misunderstanding. It's not nothing, Marcus interrupted. You were very clear, very specific. I think David deserves to know what you said about him. Marcus, please, I whispered. He ignored me and turned to David. She said if she could start over, she'd choose you instead of me. The room went completely silent. David's face went through several rapid changes. Confusion, shock, discomfort, then something like horror. What? David said, looking at me. Is that true? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. She listed all the reasons, Marcus continued, his voice still that terrible calm. Your job, your car, your body, your confidence. She was very thorough. Dude, David said, standing up from the table. I don't know what's happening here, but I was angry. I finally found my voice. I was upset about our anniversary, and I said something horrible that I didn't mean. I was just trying to hurt him because he'd hurt me. I didn't actually. You hurt me by forgetting a reservation, Marcus interrupted, looking at me for the first time. So you hurt me by saying you wished you'd married my brother instead. That's proportional to you. That's not what I meant, I insisted. Then what did you mean? Marcus asked. Because you seemed pretty clear at the time. David was backing toward the door. I need to leave. This is way too uncomfortable. I'm married. You're married to my brother. This is completely inappropriate. Wait, I said, standing up. Let me explain. I don't want an explanation, David said, his voice firm. What you said is messed up. What you're making me a part of is messed up. I'm leaving. He looked at Marcus with something like pity. I'm sorry, man. I had no idea she felt that way. If I'd known. You did nothing wrong, Marcus said quietly. This isn't about you. David nodded, still looking uncomfortable and upset. He gave me one last disgusted look, then left without another word. The door closing behind him was one of the loudest sounds I'd ever heard. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Unable to believe Marcus had actually done that. Had actually invited his brother over just to humiliate me, to make me face the consequences of my words. How could you do that? I finally asked, my voice shaking. How could I? Marcus repeated, turning to look at me. You're asking how I could do that. You humiliated me in front of your brother, I said, my voice rising. You made me look like someone who told her husband she wished she'd married someone else, Marcus finished. You did that yourself. I just made sure you had to own it. I didn't mean it, I insisted again. Stop saying that, Marcus said, his calm finally cracking. You did mean it. You meant it in that moment. You said it to hurt me. You weaponized my brother to make me feel inadequate. You compared me to him in every way possible and found me lacking. I was angry. So you decided to make me feel like my own wife wants my brother instead of me? Marcus asked. That's what you do when you're angry? You go for the most devastating, most unforgivable thing you can think of. Tears were streaming down my face now. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said it. But you didn't have to tell him. You didn't have to make him come over here and what? Marcus interrupted. Face you. See what kind of person you really are. Understand why I can't stay married to someone who would say something like that? My heart stopped. What? Marcus walked to the bedroom without answering. I followed him, panic rising. He went straight to the closet and pulled out my suitcase. The large one. The one we used for long trips. "What are you doing?" I asked, though it was obvious. He didn't answer, just opened the suitcase on the bed and started pulling my clothes from the hangers. "Marcus, stop," I said, grabbing his arm. "Stop. We can talk about this. We can work through this. Please don't." He gently but firmly removed my hand from his arm and continued packing. Methodically, carefully, folding each item with precision before placing it in the suitcase. Not violently, not angrily, just efficiently, like he was completing a necessary task. I said I was sorry. I tried again, my voice breaking. "What more do you want from me?" "Nothing," he said simply. "I don't want anything from you anymore." "You can't end our marriage over one fight," I said desperately. "Over one thing I said in anger." "You're right," Marcus said, still packing. "It's not about one fight. It's about who you become when you're angry. It's about the fact that when you want to hurt me, you reach for the most painful weapon possible. It's about the fact that you compared me to my brother and told me you'd choose him instead." He zipped up the suitcase and set it on the floor. "I thought you married me because you wanted me," he said quietly. "Not because I was available, not because I was good enough, but because you actually chose me, wanted me, loved me. I do love you. But not enough to protect what we have," he interrupted. "Not enough to keep your cruelty in check when you're upset. Not enough to think before you destroy something with words you can never take back." He carried the suitcase to the front door and set it down. I followed him, begging, crying, trying everything I could think of to make him stop. "Please," I said, "please don't do this. I made a mistake, a horrible mistake. But we can get past this. We can go to counseling. We can—" "I don't want to get past this," Marcus said, cutting me off. "I don't want to spend years in therapy trying to forget that my wife told me she wished she'd married my brother. I don't want to constantly wonder if you're comparing me to him every time we're together. I don't want to live with someone who uses the people I love as weapons against me." "I won't do it again," I promised desperately. "I'll never say anything like that again. "You shouldn't have said it the first time," Marcus said. "That's the point. The fact that you are capable of saying it at all tells me everything I need to know." He walked to the door and opened it. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, my voice small. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw nothing but exhaustion and disappointment in his eyes. "If you wanted to start over so badly," he said quietly, "start over somewhere else." The words hit like a physical blow. "Marcus." "Goodbye," he said firmly. He didn't wait to see if I'd pick up my suitcase. Didn't watch me walk out the door. Just stood there holding it open, waiting for me to leave. I had no choice. Nowhere else to go in that moment. No way to fight my way back inside. So I picked up my suitcase and walked out into the hallway. The door closed behind me. I heard the lock click, and I stood there, suitcase in hand, realizing what I'd destroyed with one cruel comparison made in anger. I'm writing this from a friend's couch 1 week later, the friend who reluctantly agreed to let me stay after I showed up on her doorstep that night, crying and homeless, with nowhere else to go. She answered the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face and my suitcase, and let out a long sigh. "What did you do?" she asked. Not what happened, but what did you do? Like she already knew this was my fault. She's been supportive but honest. Too honest, maybe. The kind of honest that makes me want to defend myself, even though I know she's right. "What were you thinking?" she asked the next morning when I told her what happened. "Why would you say that to him?" I wanted him to feel bad, I admitted. Sitting on her couch with a mug of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. I wanted him to understand how I felt when he forgot our anniversary. She stared at me for a long moment. "So, you told him you wished you'd married his brother instead? That's your idea of making a point?" When she put it like that, it sounded even worse than it had felt in the moment. "I was angry," I said weakly. "I wasn't thinking clearly." Obviously, she agreed, but even angry, most people know not to tell their spouse they'd rather be married to someone else, especially not their spouse's sibling. That's like relationship ending 101. Marcus hasn't contacted me. Not once. Not a text. Not a call. Not an email. Nothing. His silence is deafening. Absolute. Like I've ceased to exist in his world. I've tried reaching out to him dozens of times, apologizing, explaining, begging for another chance. The first day, I sent him 23 text messages, variations on the same desperate theme. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I was just angry. Please talk to me. I love you. We can work through this. All delivered, none read. He either blocked me or turned off read receipts. I tried calling, 10 times the first day, 20 times the second. Each call went straight to voicemail. I left messages at first, long, rambling apologies, then shorter, more desperate pleas. Eventually, I stopped leaving messages because what was the point? He clearly wasn't listening to them. I tried emailing him from my work account since I figured he might have blocked my personal email. A long, carefully worded message about how I'd made a terrible mistake, how I'd let my anger control me, how I'd said something unforgivable but didn't actually mean it. The email bounced back. He'd added my work email to his block list too. I went to our apartment on the third day, used my key to get in, thinking maybe I could talk to him face to face, make him listen. The locks had been changed. I stood there in the hallway for 10 minutes, trying my key over and over like maybe I was just using it wrong. Like maybe if I tried enough times it would magically work. It didn't. I knocked instead. Knocked for 20 minutes. I could hear the TV inside, could hear him moving around, but he never came to the door. Eventually, a neighbor poked her head out and asked if I needed help. I live here, I said. This is my apartment. She looked at me with something like pity. The man who lives there told us his ex-wife might try to get in. Said if we saw anyone lingering in the hallway, we should call the building security. Ex-wife. He was already calling me his ex-wife. I left before she could call security. I tried calling David to apologize for putting him in that horrible situation, for using him as a weapon against Marcus, for making everything so uncomfortable and inappropriate. He didn't answer. His wife did. Don't call here again, she said before I could even get a word out. Her voice was cold, angry, protective. What you did was completely inappropriate. You made David uncomfortable in his own brother's home. You tried to use him to hurt Marcus. We want nothing to do with you. I just wanted to apologize, I started. We don't want your apology, she interrupted. We want you to leave both of them alone. Marcus is devastated. David is uncomfortable. You've done enough damage. Stay away from this family. Then she hung up. So I've lost Marcus's entire family. All because I couldn't control my mouth during one argument. I've tried reaching out to other people in Marcus's life, hoping someone might intercede on my behalf, might convince him to at least talk to me. His best friend told me bluntly. He showed me the texts, told me what you said. I don't blame him for leaving. If someone told me they'd rather be married to my brother, I'd be done too. His co-worker, who I'd become friendly with over the years, was slightly gentler, but equally unsupportive. I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't get involved. What you said was really hurtful. I don't think there's anything anyone can say to fix this. His sister won't even take my calls. She sent one text. You hurt my brother. You don't get to use me to get back to him. Lose my number. One by one, everyone I've contacted has made it clear. They're on Marcus's side. They think what I said was unforgivable. They don't think he should give me another chance. And the worst part is, I'm starting to agree with them. I've been replaying that night over and over. The fight, the comparison. Marcus's face when I said I'd choose his brother. The dinner with David. The packing. The door closing behind me. Every time I replay it, I see more clearly how badly I messed up. How cruel I was. How unnecessary it all was. Marcus forgot to make a reservation. That's what started this. A forgotten phone call. A minor inconvenience. Something that could have been solved by just going to a different restaurant or rescheduling for another night. And I responded by telling him I wished I'd married his brother instead. That's not proportional. That's not reasonable. That's not a normal response to a minor disappointment. That's cruel and calculated and designed to inflict maximum damage. I wanted to hurt him, and I succeeded. I wanted him to feel inadequate and compared and second best. I wanted him to understand what it felt like to be overlooked. But in achieving those goals, I destroyed our marriage. I showed him that when I'm angry, I reach for the most devastating weapon I can find. I proved that I'm willing to use the people he loves to hurt him. What partner can trust someone like that? What spouse can feel safe with someone who weaponizes family relationships during arguments? Marcus can't, and he shouldn't have to. I've been replaying that night over and over. The fight, the comparison, the dinner, the packing. Marcus's face when I said I'd choose his brother instead. That moment when I watched the hurt flash across his features before being replaced by cold resolve. I knew in that moment I'd crossed a line, but I thought we'd fight through it. I thought he'd yell at me and I'd apologize and we'd eventually move past it. I didn't think he'd actually orchestrate a confrontation with his brother. Didn't think he'd make me say those words out loud in front of the person I'd used as a weapon. Didn't think he'd pack my things and ask me to leave. Some people have said Marcus overreacted. That inviting David to dinner was cruel and unnecessary. That packing my bags over one comment was extreme. But most people, when they hear the full story, agree with what he did. "You told him you'd choose his brother?" my sister asked when I called her. "Of course he left you. What did you expect?" "I expected him to be hurt, not to blow up our entire marriage," I said. "You blew up your marriage," she corrected. "He just acknowledged the damage you'd done." Everyone I've talked to has essentially said the same thing. I went too far. I said something unforgivable. I used the cruelest comparison possible to hurt him. And now I'm facing the consequences. I've learned that some comparisons are relationship ending. That some words, once said, can never be unsaid or forgiven. You don't tell your spouse you wish you'd married someone else. You especially don't tell them you wish you'd married their sibling, their family member, the person they've been compared to their entire life. You don't use the people your partner loves as weapons to hurt them during arguments. You don't take someone's deepest insecurity, in Marcus's case, always feeling like he was second best to his older brother, and weaponize it when you're angry. You don't say things designed to destroy their self-worth just because you're upset about something relatively minor. He forgot an anniversary reservation, so I told him I wished I'd married his brother instead. That's not proportional. That's not fair. That's not even rational. That's just cruel. And I'm paying for that cruelty now with the loss of my marriage, my home, and any connection to the family I'd spent 5 years becoming part of. I wanted power in that moment. I wanted control. I wanted him to feel what I was feeling. Overlooked, undervalued, taken for granted. But instead of expressing those feelings directly and honestly, instead of saying, "I feel hurt," when you forget important things, I weaponized his relationship with his brother. I compared them. I found Marcus lacking. I told him to his face that given the chance to choose again, I'd pick someone else. How is anyone supposed to come back from that? How is Marcus supposed to trust that I actually want to be with him when I've explicitly said I'd prefer to be with his brother? He can't. And I destroyed that possibility with one cruel comparison made in anger. My therapist, yes, I'm seeing a therapist now, trying to understand why I do the things I do, asked me a question that I've been unable to stop thinking about. "When you said those words," she asked during our second session, "what were you hoping would happen?" I wanted him to feel bad, I admitted. I wanted him to understand how much he'd hurt me by forgetting our anniversary. "And you thought telling him you'd rather be married to his brother would achieve that?" When she said it out loud like that, it sounded insane, because it was insane. I wanted him to fight for me, I said, realizing the truth as I spoke it. I wanted him to prove that I was wrong, to tell me all the reasons I should choose him, to show me that he cared enough to argue. My therapist nodded. So you created a test. You said something horrible to see if he'd fight to prove you wrong. I guess so, I admitted. And when he didn't fight, when he instead confirmed your statement by inviting his brother over and making you own your words, what did that tell you? That he didn't care enough to fight for me, I said, though even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Or, my therapist suggested gently, that he has enough self-respect not to compete for someone who's just told him they'd rather be with someone else. That he loves himself enough not to beg someone to choose him. That hit harder than I expected, because she was right. Marcus didn't fail some tests by not fighting for me. He passed a different test, the test of self-respect, of knowing his worth, of refusing to compete for someone who'd just told him he was second best. I wanted him to fight for me, but what I actually did was show him I wasn't worth fighting for, that I was the kind of person who'd use his brother as a weapon, who'd say the cruelest thing possible to win an argument, who'd destroy something precious to prove a point. Why would he want to keep someone like that? I've been thinking a lot about the dinner he orchestrated, about inviting David over, about making me sit there while he told his brother what I'd said. Some people have told me that was cruel, that Marcus was punishing me, that he wanted revenge, but I don't think that's what it was. I think he was showing me, and maybe himself, the reality of what I'd said, making it real instead of just words spoken in anger that could be taken back or explained away. By involving David, by having this conversation in front of the person I'd used as a comparison, Marcus made it impossible for me to minimize or deny what I'd said. He made me face the full weight of my words, and in doing so, he showed both of us that there was no coming back from this. No way to explain it away. No path forward that didn't involve him constantly wondering if I was comparing him to his brother, if I regretted my choice, if I was just staying because I couldn't have who I actually wanted. He couldn't live with that doubt, and he shouldn't have to. I told him I'd choose his brother if I could start over. He invited us both to dinner and made me own those words in front of the person I'd used as a weapon. Then he packed my bags and told me to start over somewhere else. I didn't lose my husband because I wanted his brother. I don't want his brother. I never did. David is a good person, a good husband to his own wife, but I've never wanted him romantically, never thought of him that way. I lost Marcus because I wanted attention and validation, and for him to feel as bad as I felt in that moment, because I was angry about a forgotten reservation and decided the appropriate response was to tell him I wished I'd married someone else, and I used the cruelest comparison I could think of to achieve that goal. I compared him to his brother and found him lacking. I told him I'd made the wrong choice in marrying him. I made him feel like a consolation prize in his own marriage. I weaponized his lifelong insecurity for temporary power in an argument. And he responded by showing me exactly what that kind of cruelty deserves: immediate consequences and no second chances. Marcus didn't compete with his brother for me. He didn't try to prove he was the better choice. He didn't fight to win me back or convince me I was wrong. He simply let me go. Because why would anyone fight to keep someone who'd just told them they weren't really wanted in the first place? Why would anyone try to prove their worth to someone who'd just said, explicitly, that they'd prefer someone else? They wouldn't, and they shouldn't. I'm sitting on my friend's couch, surrounded by the belongings Marcus carefully packed for me, realizing that I destroyed my marriage over a forgotten reservation. That's what it comes down to. He forgot to book a restaurant, a simple administrative failure, an oversight that could have been solved in a dozen different ways, and I responded by telling him I wished I'd married someone else, by telling him his brother was better in every way, by making him feel inadequate and second best and unwanted. And now I have neither the husband I destroyed nor the brother I never actually wanted. Just the consequences of words I can never take back. Words that revealed something ugly about who I become when I'm angry. Words that showed Marcus exactly what kind of partner I am when things don't go my way. I wanted him to feel my pain. Instead, I created a pain so much worse for both of us. I wanted validation. Instead, I got abandonment. I wanted him to fight for me. Instead, I gave him every reason to walk away. And he did. The worst part is realizing that he was right to do it, that I would have done the same thing in his position, that what I said was genuinely unforgivable, and no amount of apologies or explanations can change that. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some words once spoken can't be unsaid. Some damage once done can't be repaired. I burned our bridge with one cruel comparison, and now I'm standing on my side of the ashes, realizing too late what I destroyed. He forgot to book a restaurant. I told him I'd choose his brother if I could start over. One of these things is a minor mistake that hurts no one. The other is a deliberate cruelty that destroyed a marriage. And I'm the one who chose cruelty. I'm the one who has to live with that choice.